First of all, why am I talking about this? I continue to talk about these issues, including Chris Cuomo, in large part because I am very frustrated with the state of the American press corps. Because a free people really do need a free press. We really do need a free press. And the bulk of the American media has become a partisan operation for the Democrats. And in fairness, prior to the Civil War, and I think that's an important point, prior to the Civil War, you had partisan presses. You had Republican and Democrats. So to this day, there are newspapers around the country. I think the Arizona Republic, is it the Cleveland Democrat? I can't remember, but there were newspapers that would declare themselves Republican or Democrat. And it identified the partisan editorial position, and the editorial pages of the country to this day are still partisan. And most of them are of the left. But on the front pages of newspapers across the country for a generation, there has been an attempt to fairly encapsulate what is actually the news. And over time, biases crept in as to what they did and did not cover, and then in what they did cover, how they covered it. And today now, you have the Associated Press and other organizations that believe that reporters, because they have opinions and biases, should be allowed in certain ways to express them. And it has degraded the American people's trust in the media. Through it all, over time, CNN was a network that claimed to be a network that just gave you the news. And it has always been obvious that wasn't always the case, but in the past it had done far better. When Jeff Zucker came over to CNN from NBC, he propped up Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo in the evening and gave both of them license to be pretty aggressively partisan and of the left. With Chris Cuomo, his brother was the governor of New York. His father had been the governor of New York. There was no question that he was a liberal Democrat. And in fact, anyone who has paid any attention to Chris Cuomo over the last number of years on CNN has seen him ask questions of Republicans he would never ask of Democrats and presuppose information about the right he would never do on the left. And in fact, to presuppose information that shaped his coverage to make it of the left. That's not in dispute. Jeff Zucker at CNN also hired Valerie Jarrett's daughter, and he hired Jim Scudo, who worked for Barack Obama, to be an anchor. It's one thing to hire these people to be commentators for the Democratic Party, to hire them to be objective reporters and anchors when he wouldn't do that for people on the right. And we know because they had one, what's her name? I forget, but she was going to come over and help shape political coverage for the network, and fair and impartial, just shaping behind the scenes. These things are important. You should look at them. And the left pitched a fit and couldn't hire her. CNN should always do better because CNN claims to be better, and they're not. And they've had to make a call here, but there are a couple of other things going on here you need to know. I said yesterday that Jeff Zucker would not be able to keep Cuomo because of the people at CNN and Jeff Zucker's own past. Jeff Zucker knew a lot about Matt Lauer's sexcapades at NBC. In fact, they did a comedy roast of Matt Lauer for his birthday one year, and Jeff Zucker talked about and made jokes about the sex toys and the women. Everybody knew. Everybody laughed. Jeff Zucker clearly knew, and he was never held to account for his role in enabling and emboldening Matt Lauer at NBC to do the things Matt Lauer did. By the time all that came out, Zucker was ensconced at CNN, and they had rebounded in pretty good ratings. And no one at CNN, no one at Time Warner was going to hold Jeff Zucker accountable for it. You can't go through the Lauer stuff and not be held accountable and then get to the Chris Cuomo stuff where he is helping his brother go after the women who are claiming to be sexually harassed, if not assaulted. You can't do that, particularly at CNN, where you have more and more empowered a lot of activist progressive women at CNN. who as employees are woke and want the network to steer to a more woke line. I will tell you my story from CNN. I've never told this on radio. Do you know the play The Vagina Monologues? And you'll have to apologize. I apologize if you're offended by the word, but it's deeply relevant here because it's a play. And it is a play essentially defending abortion rights. And it is a play where various women perform the part on stage, give the various monologues. And in 2012, I was at the Republican convention. I was a contributor to CNN. And CNN does something very cool at every Republican and Democratic political convention. They put up a CNN diner, and you can go in and you get great meals, have a few drinks, and hobnob with the who's who of the media world and the political elite of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And I went to the Republican convention, and it's the night before it ends, and it's late at night. And I'm there with the various who's who of the CNN establishment, of management, the president, of the editorial directors, of the standards directors, of the Democratic and Republican pundits. And we're all sitting around. And we're talking about what's going to come up in the Democratic convention. And I said, in my mind, given the state of the play with the Supreme Court at the time, and the way the Democrats were increasingly a party that really wanted to scare women to vote for the Democrats through abortion, it was going to be a one-week retelling of the Vagina Monologues. That play. And everybody laughed. The people who were in management laughed. The head of standards laughed. They all laughed. They all agreed. They all nodded along with me. They knew what it was going to be. They were going to have a week-long advocacy of abortion rights. And then the Democratic convention came around. And as I predicted, it was a nonstop abortion fest on stage. They had a Planned Parenthood, the various Democratic women lamenting the Roe was at stake and women's right to choose, and on and on. And one of the nights, it was the night Michelle Obama was speaking. I think it was the third night of the convention. And I said, at night 3 of the Vagina Monologues, going as expected. Now, I had said that around the executives of CNN and the pundits of CNN and the anchors of CNN, and everyone was nodding along with me that, yeah, this could be a lot about abortion. But then I dared say it on Twitter, and it became a thing. And Media Matters came after me. And a whole lot of the people who behind the scenes were nodding along and agreeing with me that that's what it would be like were now ready to have me fired for daring to say in public what I was willing to say in private. If you know anything about me, I think if I'm willing to say something in private, I should be willing to say it in public. I don't like to keep anything from you, the listener or the viewer or the reader. And they were perfectly fine with me saying it in that crowd, but some of the women complained. They wound up not suspending me. They wound up not punishing me. They came close. But they told me that several of the women, they would be uncomfortable with me being on air, and so I should just keep my head down and stay off Twitter for several days because the women behind the scenes could make life difficult. That was in 2012. It's only gotten worse over time. Not only that, you've got a number of the anchors at CNN who really have prided themselves in the objective standard of CNN, and they're very angry with Chris Cuomo to begin with because Chris Cuomo has dragged various reporters and anchors of CNN into fights with other networks they never asked to be in. He has gone out of his way to be a partisan progressive on television, and that besmirched the reputation, along with Don Lemon, besmirched the reputation of the network. And Jeff Zucker's had his back the whole time. And Jeff Zucker had his back over this. In fact, Jeff Zucker capitalized on that relationship for a number of months. And during that time, it made a number of people at CNN very squeamish. And so now the documents come out. We've all known that Chris Cuomo was involved in his brother's PR campaign and getting dirt and like. It's been reported. But now the documents are there for all to see. CNN had no choice. Zucker had to do this. between the Matt Lauer stuff and the increased wokeness of some of the employees at CNN and the downright hostility of a number of the other reporters and anchors at CNN, and the fact that Jeff Zucker does not have the credibility within Time Warner he once had because the ratings aren't doing so well anymore. In fact, there are days where MSNBC and CNN's combined audience doesn't even match Fox's audience. He's got to do something. The shine is off Jeff Zucker. He needs to do something, so he has to take Chris Cuomo off. It wouldn't surprise me if we never see Chris Cuomo on CNN again. What is surprising is that Jeffrey Toobin remains. You cannot keep Tuggin Toobin and also Chris Cuomo, given the internal situation at CNN. You just can't do that. And so Zucker had to get rid of him. Now, here's the problem. They should have gotten rid of him sooner. In fact, they never should have hired him, given his background and pedigree as a scion of the Democratic Party. If CNN wants to be the network that delivers the news, they need to be the network that delivers us the news. But increasingly under Zucker, they just want to be MSNBC light. They want to be MSNBC without the extremism of MSNBC. They want to cater to a liberal coastal elite that drips with disdain for Republicans and conservatives and allows on only one pro-conservative voice, Scott Jennings, and shuts down all the other conversations. They got to pick. Maybe they can use this as an opportunity to rebuild some credibility, but I don't think they're going to, because they know the money is in entertainment, and the people who work there, overwhelmingly, they want to entertain the left, not the right. And so it's not going to get any better. But at least Chris Cuomo has his comeuppance.